So for this graphic organizer, we're going to be looking at function, purpose, and cultural context. I have some words here at the top that are guiding words that you may find helpful when thinking about some of these questions or writing your statements. For the graphic organizer, I recommend that you write in full and complete sentences. Try to use the name of the artist or the title of the piece frequently. When we talk about artists, it is important to make sure that we are referring to them either by their first and last name or their last name only. Don't call them by their first name. It implies a level of intimacy and friendship that we do not have with these artists. So the first question we're going to try to answer is right here at the top in bold. It says, why was this art piece made? There is a lot of different reasons why art can be made, and I have some of those listed here. Now, one of the things that you may find when you're figuring this out is your research. You will have to do your own independent research. I would recommend independently researching the widow, one, as well as the artist herself, Kathy Kollwitz. Same thing for the second piece that you're going to be looking at. Look at the piece titled Migrant Mother, and then also look at Dorothea Lange's life. That will give you some insight into why they may have made this art piece. Typically, we're going to find 3 to 4 reasons that someone made a piece of art. The first one is for status. So this would enhance the power or social standing of the artist. So to display the wealth through the use of precious materials, skilled craftsmanship, or the creative originality of the artist. This would be something like the Book of Kells, which was lavishly decorated with very intricate, detailed illumination. The cover most likely would have been something that was very rich and succulent and opulent, and gold and gemstones. And so that would enhance the status of the owner. This second one here for ritual is if it's part of a religious celebration. So this would be some of the iconography that we looked at, or even some of the Gothic cathedrals. This second or third one here is to teach or tell a story. So was the artist trying to inform us about some event that happened? So if we think back to the Raft of the Medusa, he was trying to explain what happened to the people on that ship after the wreck. To understand the human condition. So this would be a representation of abstract concepts and feelings. So these are the things that are difficult sometimes to put into words. So pain, love, friendship, some of these more abstract concepts, hope, that can be represented through the visual medium of art. Sometimes art is made as propaganda. So it's trying to make a message to distort the truth for political advantage. It doesn't always necessarily have to be a bad thing. Sometimes political advantage and propaganda can be good, but we need to consider that is one reason for us to have art be created. It may also be made to record an event. So there may be something that they are trying to document. So going back to the Raft of the Medusa, we can think about how it's to teach and tell a story. It's also to record the event that happened. So there's an example of where we've already hit 2 of these reasons that art was made. Sometimes the role of art is to make us see something with new and fresh eyes, to make us view the world or a situation or an object in a different way. So it's there to make us question. Often art is about personal expression. So it's something that the artist is trying to express that is an internal reason. And sometimes it is simply just to make art for its own aesthetic beauty, to make art for art's sake. There's no providing detail here for decoration because it's simply there to be decorative. Oftentimes, art that is for contemplation can also be for decoration. And this could be things such as statues or vases or ceramic pieces or functional art, as well as the stuff that we put on our walls. And then the last one here is to release emotions in some sort of form of art therapy. So this is called catharsis. So we're trying to communicate and get out our emotions in a way through our art making. The second question that I would want you to consider here is what key historical events took place at the time these works were created. It is important to make sure that you are looking at things that directly impact the artist or the art making process. Don't give me random facts about what happened during that time period. Make sure that they are connected to the artist and the societies in which they lived. The example I've given this is how did the French Revolution influence the paintings of Jacques-Louis David? Now remember, David did Death of Marat, where his friend was murdered in his bathtub. He was a French revolutionary. The fact that the French Revolution was happening directly impacted the work of David. So we can talk about how the French Revolution changed French society and changed the way David worked. So we really want to make those personal connections between what was happening in the places that they lived, how it impacted them, and what it did to their work. It is really important in these sections and in this graphic organizer as a whole to explain yourself fully. Don't just say, he was impacted by the French Revolution. How was he impacted by the French Revolution? What was the French Revolution? Give me more. Explain it to me like I have no idea what the event was. The more detail you can provide here, the better off you will be when you are doing your final project for this. So the next question is, what scientific innovations may have influenced the artist? So what are the things out there that may have been technology or science related that directly impacted the artist? Again, we're not looking for random facts here. We're looking for direct connections. So one of the examples I've given was, how did Freud's theories on the unconscious and dreams influence the paintings of Salvador Dali? Now, Freud was a very fascinating character at the forefront of psychology, which was a new science. And his ideas about our dreams deeply impacted the work of Dali. So it doesn't necessarily have to be like a physical, technological innovation. It may be, but it may not be. It could be something more like this scientific theory. And we could also think about this as a broader culture. Was there something that happened in the world that was scientific that impacted these two artists? The next one is, what other artists influenced the work? Artists do not work in a vacuum. We don't live in a vacuum. We don't live mostly squirreled away from other people. So these artists were directly influenced by other artists. They worked with them. They talked with them. Who were they? Tell me about them. Again, this can be found by doing some simple research on both of these artists. And then we have, what were the philosophical ideas of the time? So this could be, what sort of movement was going on? Were they part of that movement? Were they not part of the movement? Were they working outside the system? Did other artists like their work? Did other artists hate their work? So tell me about those sorts of things. The last question I have here are, what are the cultural influences? Now, this is really interesting because we're really digging in to what sort of societies they lived in. So I've given you some guiding questions here. How were women regarded in the culture that produced the work? Remember, we've talked multiple times so far yet this semester, I've mentioned it, about women's role in society, what they were doing, how they were treated by society. Was that something that potentially impacted either of these women artists? Was society classified by social or economic status? So, did we have a ruling class? And then, did we have a middle class? Did we have a lower class? Which one of those classes did these women belong to? Were they working to change the idea of social or economic status? Who was the intended audience? So, who was the piece of art made for? That kind of ties directly back to those questions in the first one. Were they made to target a certain audience? What possible symbols are included in this piece? Is there anything symbolic that happens in these pieces? And I did skip one. Does the artist live in a society that's individualistic or collectivist? So, do they live in a society where individual freedoms are valued above all others? Or do they live in a society where the collective works together to achieve things? So, these are the questions that you should answer. For these questions outside of the first one, each one of these should be completed for each of the artists. The only one that is different is this first one. You will not be able to answer all of these questions for each of the piece. For this first one, remember, you're only picking 3 or 4 that fit the research that you have found. Again, being as specific as possible using full and complete sentences, because this is the basis for your final project. So the more detailed you can be here, the better off you will be when it comes time to complete your final project. If you have any questions, as always, please make sure to ask and clarify them with me during class time.